Welcome, bienvenue, good afternoon. My name is Renee Ketchum, and I curate the cultural offerings for AFUSA. Today, I'm honored and thrilled to welcome you to a dialogue on Proust's Time Regained. Fereshteh Priou and Professor Bill Carter explore the return to Combray. AFUSA is the largest Alliance Française network in the world, helping 26,000 learners of French each year. Please take a look at our video. So as you learn French, live French, and love French, please visit www.afusa.org and take a look at our national events coming up soon. We have a fabulous French Cinematheque, Combien l'Automne with Peter de Bruges, who is the head film critic at Variety magazine, as well as a wonderful conference, Portrait in Red, a Paris obsession coming up, and many other events. So please go to the website and take a look. A few logistics and format. Please stay on mute during the presentation, stay on speaker view, and all questions that you may have for our speakers, please put them in the chat for the end of the hour. If you have any technical issues, sign back in after a few moments using the original Zoom link. This event is being recorded for our YouTube channel, and the total runtime is 1 hour. I am honored to introduce Professor William C. Carter. William Carter is a distinguished professor emeritus of French at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. His biography, Marcel Proust, A Life, was selected as a notable book of 2000 by the New York Times. Professor Carter co-produced the award-winning documentary film, Marcel Proust, A Writer's Life. He also recently completed the publication of his revision to the translation of Proust's In Search of Lost Time by Yale University Press. Fereshteh Priou is the founder of the Proust Society of Greenwich, Connecticut, and leads a monthly gathering of Proust enthusiasts, which she's done since 2007. The group members engage in close reading of Marcel Proust's books, À la recherche du temps perdu. Fereshteh started the fourth round of reading the book in January of 2023. She is also currently working on a much anticipated book about Marcel, Odette, and Combray. So please visit www.proustsociety.org if you want to learn more. And welcome, Fereshteh. Welcome, Professor Carter.
Yes, Professor Carter, it's such a great honor and a real treat to have you with us today. Congratulations on finalizing your revised translation of Proust's work, especially the recent publication in May, I think, of the final volume, Time Regained. I know that I speak for many Proust enthusiasts when I say that your annotations bring new depths and insight into the work. So thank you. Before we dive into the world of Combray, I'd like to start with two questions. We all know how deeply you are dedicated to as a Proust scholar to his work, but completing a project of this scale is still an incredible undertaking that amazes me. My first question, what inspired you to take on this this great task? And second, do you have any other projects in the work? Knowing you, I'm sure there is something beautiful that we could expect.
Well, thank you for the introduction, everyone, and for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you and share my interest in Proust with all of you. What inspired me to do it? I guess in part the beauty of the Scott Moncrief translation into English, and then the fact that that it had never been adequately annotated. That there are very few notes to the previous edition of Scott Moncrief's translation, and I found that I think we all agree with this, that he really had a sense, he had a deep connection with Proust, I think both literarily and spiritually. And he was a poet, and he really sensed so many things. He got so many things right that were not evident at the time, because, as you know, he only had Du Côté de chez Swann. He didn't know where Proust was going with the story. He had no idea. But he called the opening section of Combray, Scott Moncrief called it an overture. Well, nobody knew for sure. Was that a liberty that Scott Moncrief was taking? Then many, many years later, only recently, we discovered a letter of Proust where Proust refers to the opening pages as an ouverture. And then also, in the beginning of Swann's Way, Proust uses a word for noyau, which can be the pit of a fruit or nucleus. And Scott Moncrief translated that as nucleus. And he had no idea that Proust was going to fill the following volumes with planetary imagery, and using the fact that le monde, in French means not only the world, but society. And so there are so many things that connected that translation to the original. And I think a lot of the beautiful music that's in the French does come across in Scott Moncrief's translation. However, this big project was not really my idea. Yale University Press, when Scott Moncrief came into the public domain, asked me to do this. And so it was truly a labor of love of many years. And I did wonder, as Proust himself wondered, and the narrator wonders in the novel, would I have time? Would I actually be able to live long enough and finish the task? So thank you for your kind remarks and congratulatory expression. I'm very happy that I and Yale Press and my wonderful group of readers who helped me so much during the project were able to bring it to completion. The only immediate project that I have in mind is there will be a guidebook to the novel. So that will be the final volume of this edition. We're doing something that I don't believe has been done in any other guidebook in English that I'm aware of. The others have included characters and people, places and themes, but none of them have included, as the Pléiade edition does, the list of artistic and musical literary works. So we will have a complete section that will include that, which I think will be very handy. Working on the index, as all of you are aware, no matter how many times you read Proust, you're always surprised again and again at what you discover. So just the references to laughter in the themes, to the different characters. I have 10 pages of references to, I'm not going to be able to use them all, of course, and some of them are very offhanded, but his ability to describe individual particular laughter for characters, not only that always suit the character's personality, but sometimes fit a different situation that the character's in, is just amazing. And so until you put all of that together, you don't really, you're just in awe again at what Proust was able to do. I'm trying to be conscious of the time because it's difficult. It's difficult to be brief when you're talking about Proust, as we all know.
Well, we are very much looking forward to seeing more of your work. So let's go to the final volume, Time Regained, and the question of the return to Combray. The final volume is full of surprises, but the volume does not start with a big reveal. It starts with taking us back to Combray, a place we haven't seen really much of since thousands of pages before in the first volume, The Swan's Way. Here, the narrator returns to Combray with Gilberte Swann, now Madame de Saint-Loup. She still owns Tansonville, her father's estate outside Combray. So what is fascinating in this moment is that it feels like the novel is looping back on itself. by returning to Combray at the very end, Proust makes the whole work feel circular, like it's framed by this place, like bookends, sort of. But why? What point is Proust trying to make by having his narrator return to Combray, apart from pointing out, I don't know, the sticky nature of memory? Is there a bigger or deeper message here about memory and time?
I think so, and as you know, the novel is circular in nature. It begins and ends with the word time, longtemps and dans le temps, and so Proust wrote, as far as we know, and I'm fairly sure we do have adequate evidence of this. He wrote the first and the last part roughly at the same time, and so what was wonderful about that is that being circular, the novel has kind of the shape of a balloon. So when the war came along and Proust was forced to stop publishing, he was able to include the war years. And so the nice thing about the shape of a balloon is you can continually expanding it without disrupting the symmetry of the parts. And so I think the return to Combray is not only, and as you pointed out, it's been many pages since we were there, a return to his childhood, but also part of the plot strategy of Proust to prove that indeed his memory is insufficient. He has lost touch with the past. And the key element in terms of the narrator, Marcel, becoming a writer, is the key scene at Combray is the scene of the goodnight kiss. And that's the first slide if someone wants to look at it or read it, or I can read it, whatever you prefer.
We have Tracy with us, and Tracy always reads for us. Which slide is it?
One.
Slide 1, okay. Tracy, please.
We probably have to let her.
You're muted. I see you muted, Tracy. Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah, okay.
So let's go to slide 1. Thank you so much, Tracy.
It's okay. Mamma replied, "Why, Françoise, he doesn't know himself. It is his nerves. Make up the big bed or me quickly and then go off to your own." And thus for the first time my unhappiness was regarded no longer as a fault for which I must be punished, but as an involuntary evil that had been officially recognized as a nervous condition for which I was in no way responsible.
Thank you. So when he returns many years later to Combray, he's surprised and saddened. You know, throughout the entire novel, he's discouraged so many times because he cannot write. And so this key scene at Combray is when he loses his willpower. He becomes dependent upon his parents. And so throughout the novel, he reminds us that Marcel does, I'll call him Marcel, that he cannot muster the ambition and the energy and what he thinks are the talent criteria necessary to become a writer. And so when he comes back to Combray as a mature and older man, this is slide 3. It's very short. I can read this one maybe. "I was saddened by the thought that my faculty of feeling and imagining things must have diminished, since I no longer took any pleasure in these walks." Now there's a quote that just comes to my mind, and I don't remember where it occurs in the novel, but Proust is talking about being a writer, and he says, "It's impossible to convey to the reader a pleasure that you have not felt yourself." And so here, when he returns, he's discouraged because he cannot find any pleasure in what he's seeing. So it's like not only a deficiency in his memory of the lost childhood that Roger Shattuck referred to as the Eden of Marcel Proust. And there's a remark in Time Regained, les vrais paradis sont les paradis perdus. The true paradises are the paradises that we have lost. And so he's very discouraged. And he's further discouraged when he, after spending all those years in a sanatorium, he's on the train coming back to Paris, and he looks out the window and sees a sight that normally should be inspiring to him, but he fails to react to it. This is slide 4. If Tracy would like to read it.
Sure. The sun was shining, flooding with light the upper half of the trunks of a line of trees that followed the course of the railway. Trees, I thought, you no longer have anything to say to me. My heart has grown cold and no longer hears you. I'm in the midst of nature. Well, it is with indifference, with boredom that my eyes register the lines separating the luminous from the shadowy side of your trunks. If ever I thought of myself as a poet, I know now that I am not one.
So this again is a moment of discouragement, and we know the important role. I don't have time to go into it here, but the important role that trees and flowers play throughout the novel. And one of the most mysterious and beautiful passages is the first when Marcel first goes to Balbec, and he's riding in the carriage of Madame de Villeparisis, and he sees the trees at Eudy-Ménil, and there are 3 trees, and they seem to have a message for him, and they seem to be urging him to write. And he feels that if he ignores that message, that something in him will be lost forever. So here again is another echo of that theme of the importance of trees and the relationship to his work. And here the trees seem to be saying, you're lost. It's no longer possible. Now, as we know, when he gets to the library, well, first of all, when he arrives at the matinee of the Princesse de Guermantes, now the former Madame Verdurin, and he's riding in the carriage, the cab rather, and when he gets out in the uneven pavements and he's rocking back and forth, and suddenly has an involuntary memory experience in Venice, which he had only been able to recall previously with what Proust calls a photographic or involuntary memory. Voluntary memory is vividly restored to him. And so then after that, there is a crescendo of involuntary memory experiences. Now, the important thing to note here is that this is the passage in which his will, he finds his will again. His willpower is restored. And that's slide number 5. If Tracy would please read that for us.
Yes. François le Champy, first contemplated by me in my little bedroom at Combray, during the night that was perhaps the sweetest and the saddest of my life, when I had, alas, at a time when the Guermantes still seemed to me mysterious and inaccessible, won from my parents that first abdication of their authority from which later I was to date the decline of my health and my will and my renunciation, each day disastrously confirmed, of a task that daily became more difficult, and rediscovered by me today in the library of these same Guermantes, on this most wonderful of all days that had suddenly illuminated for me not only the old groping movements of my thought, but even the whole purpose of my life and perhaps of art itself.
Thank you. So we see how closely linked those are. Now, there is such a mass of wonderful material in Proust that I think often these moments, which are very brief, that's really all we have in the first Combray, is the fact that he lost his willpower. And then it's only, as Fereshteh pointed out, many thousand pages later, that he recovers his willpower. So it's not just obviously you can't write a whole novel based on involuntary memory experiences. It should take you several lifetimes. You'd have to sit there hoping, can I have one now? But what this proves to him, that with his will, if he's able now finally to work as he has been unable to throughout the whole novel, that the past can be resurrected and saved. And we've seen how brilliantly Proust does that. I think it's been pointed out before, but basically the storyline of the whole novel is about how I cannot write a novel while we're reading one of the most beautiful, brilliant novels ever written. So there are a number of kind of magical mirror tricks that that Proust plays here with us, and so I think these are key moments, and Combray is indeed key in so many ways, but certainly in the fact that he loses his willpower at Combray, and his mother reads to him Francois de Champy. And then all these many years later, he picks up a copy of Francois de Champy in the Guermantes Library, and his willpower is restored through this series of involuntary memory experiences, proving to him that the past can be resurrected and recreated and given to others. As you know, this is one of the key Proustian notices ideas that the work of art is altruistic, and this brings us to, let's see, let's go to the quote about slide 8. Slide 8. We can count on Tracy's talent again.
Admittedly, what I had experienced in the library and what I was seeking to protect was pleasure still, but no longer pleasure of an egotistical kind, or if there was egotism in it, it was an egotism that could be put to work for the benefit of other people.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And there's a whole series of quotations in there where he blames himself for being egotistical, for being cruel, for having treated Albertine in the way that he did. And there's a passage that I didn't think of in time to create a slide for it. I'll just read it here. It's in Time Regained in my edition on page 237. So he says that the love of an Albertine is a portion of our mind more durable than the various selves that successively die within us, and that would, in their egoism, like to keep it to themselves. A portion of our mind that must, however much it hurts us, and the pain may be, in fact, beneficial, detach itself from individuals so that we can comprehend and restore it to its generality and give this love, the understanding of this love, to all, to the universal experience. And so there, again, not only in the recovery of his willpower, now he's going to be able to comprehend and restore it. What he thought was a unique individual experience will now become something that he can give to all. And give this love, the understanding of this love, to all, to the universal spirit. So there are all kinds of, in this volume, all kinds of transformations and transference from egotism to altruism, from not understanding to realize that he behaved poorly with Albertine. To me, the beautiful passage to do with this and love, and I think it's perhaps the most sensual passage involving love in the entire novel, is slide number 9. If Tracy would kindly read that.
Yes. Never would I find again that divine thing, a person with whom I could talk freely of everything, in whom I could confide. Confide? But did not other people offer me greater confidence than Albertine? Had I not had with others more extensive conversations? The fact is that confidence and conversation are trivial things in themselves. What does it matter whether they are more or less imperfect, if only there enters into them love, which alone is divine? I could see Albertine now, seated at her pianola, rosy beneath her dark hair. I could feel against my lips that she was trying to part her tongue, her maternal, inedible, nourishing, and holy tongue, whose secret flame and dew meant that even when Albertine merely let it glide over the surface of my neck or stomach, those caresses, superficial but in a sense offered by her inmost flesh, exteriorized like a cloth that shows its lining, assumed even in the most external touches, as it were, the mysterious sweetness of a penetration.
Thank you. And we remember in another passage, he says that Albertine, he uses the word fecundated him through suffering and pain. And then here we see again the transformation, and there are other passages as well, but to me this is one of the most beautiful. We see here now that he understands the true love, or the real love that he had with Albertine. And we notice the adjectives that Proust uses here: her tongue, maternal, inedible, nourishing, and holy. And so there is this great reconciliation or understanding of what he had with Albertine, that now not only has the suffering that she caused him, and of course the suffering that she caused him was basically self-inflicted. She was not trying to make him suffer, but his own egotism and his own, what Proust called his incapacity for happiness, made all of those things negative. But then he says that he learned so much from it that now he can comprehend and restore it and give it to all of us, part of the egotism becoming altruism. And as you know, Proust definition of the artist is very broad, indeed. In fact, it's any man or woman who creates something that is beneficial to humanity meets the Proustian definition of the artist. You remember in Swann's Way, the beautiful passage in which Swann contemplates the Vinteuil Sonata that he's hearing again for the first time at the Verduras. He really doesn't know who the composer is, just knows his name, Vinteuil. And during that passage, Proust, or rather Swann, calls the great artists the explorers of the invisible. And he says that they give to us these divine captives, he called. They make us see and hear things we have not heard before. And so while he's talking about these explorers of the invisible, the artists, the composers, he mentions two other people. And the two people he mentions are Ampère and Lavoisier, who are scientists. So all of this comes together in Proust. So the real benefactors of humanity can be considered the artist. And so there's very much in Proust, as you know, this search for the unity of everything, how everything fits together. I have been asked, I believe, also to comment on the space-time relationship. And of course, yes.
Well, yes, because Proust's book is, it's about time. But I think that this time is connected to space. All through the book, different stages of the narrator's life is connected to a place. And there are not many places. You can count them on the fingers on one hand. There is Combray, the seaside resort of Balbec. There is the military base at Doncières that he visits his friend Robert de Saint-Loup. Then there is Venice that he goes with his mother, and Paris. 5 places, but different stages of his life are connected to a place. But I think Combray is more than just a place on a map or background to the story. I have a feeling that it has a symbolic kind of significance, maybe a spiritual connection, maybe because it's the places of the childhood. Maybe it wants to say something about the, that childhood is something that the memories of childhood never go away. And so this return to Combray might have that kind of connection. But yes, that space and time, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I agree certainly that Combray as a space is well, you can't, I don't think you can overstate its importance in the experience of the narrator. And the listening to your remarks reminds me, you know, I've taught the novel many times in French and in English. And there's one passage that connects more than any others with the students. Now, remember, these are students who are reading the novel for the first time. They're not Proust scholars. But the passage that they really connect with takes place in Combray and at the childhood. And the narrator has been, Marcel, has been reading in the garden, and he's been sitting for hours reading. And he's filled with this energy from having sat reading, and he doesn't know exactly what to do with it. And he goes out for a walk, and he sees the reflection of the sunlight on the roof, and there are other things, the pink color of the shadow and so forth. And he wants to express that. And he's so frustrated that he can't, that he takes his umbrella or his walking stick and starts beating a tree. Again, trees are so essential in this story. And then he says, zoot, 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 zoot. And after that, he says that he realizes that he needs to be able to transfer the sources of his rapture into words, which he cannot do. He cannot do. So I always refer to that as the zoot passage. And the students love that, and they get that because it's a universal experience, right? That we all have, that we are so frustrated that we can't really put into words what we see as the prime importance of essential experiences in life. And so I also think of that. There's a wonderful passage, you know, Baudelaire was a very important influence on Proust. And there's a passage in when Baudelaire goes to hear Wagner at the opera for the first time. And he's looking at the beauty of the chandeliers in the opera house, and he expresses this desire to be able to reconnect with his childhood, with his childhood memories. And there's this wonderful definition of genius that Baudelaire gives in this passage. And he says, Le génie, c'est l'enfance retrouvée à volonté. So it's like the willful recreation of childhood. And I think that's a lot of what Proust is up to in this novel, in creating Combray and then coming back to Combray. And we think of the Guermantes, at least I do, primarily, you know, the Duchesse de Guermantes is the queen of Parisian society and all of that in the Guermantes way. But remember the first time that he saw the Guermantes and became interested in the Guermantes and went to the wedding and the chapel where he saw the Duchesse de Guermantes. All of that takes place in Combray. So, and of course, all of Swann. And you know, there's so many wonderful connections in Proust. When Swann comes, again, the scene of the goodnight kiss that we discussed earlier. Swann comes, and when Swann's there for dinner, the mother cannot come up and give him the goodnight kiss. And he refers to Swann as l'auteur de mes tristesses. And he uses the word l'auteur. And then later, when he talks about the book that he's going to write, he says, Mon livre me venait de Swann. And those are it's just magical the way those connect, you know. And so there's so many moments like that in Proust. So as I said, I agree. I don't think you can overstate the importance of Combray as a space that's important. And then, of course, at the very end of Time Regained, he wants to give the characters what we all have, the huge amount of space that we occupy in time compared to, as you point out, they're only even if you look at the topography, there are not that many actual spatial places in the novel. He wants to give us the whole sense of time, and of course that involves the going back to those very key, essential childhood memories found at Combray.
And you said something about him meeting Duchesse de Guermantes first time at Combray at her chapel in the church Saint-Hilaire. It was at the wedding of Dr. Percepier's daughter.
Right.
It reminded me that it actually it's in the carriage of Dr. Percepier that he has this experience of observing the steeples of Martinville and
Right.
starts writing about it. It's the end of the Combray chapters, actually.
Right.
So Combray chapters ends with this experience of, writing, and then he just the whole book is, oh, maybe I'll do it tomorrow. It's just the idea lingers around, but he never grabs, to his ambition and starts writing until this return to Combray at the end. Here is when he is resolved to write. And it's sort of, I wonder if Combray plays a role, maybe not in a very obvious way, but maybe subtly Proust wants to say that this is how made him decide to finally sit down and write his book. And there are other elements. You mentioned the book that he sees in the library, François Le Champy, there, in the instance of another involuntary memory. But maybe Combray also contributes to this resolution, final resolution.
Oh, yes. I think we've identified a number of ways in which it doesn't, and of course the Steeples of Martinville. That is really his only literary production until the very end. Now he does send those pages to Le Figaro, and they are finally published in Le Figaro. But he doesn't consider, although he's quite proud when it does appear, the narrator is when it appears in Le Figaro, he certainly doesn't consider that the book that he wanted that he wants to write. He doesn't consider that. He's always, the narrator has always been searching for a grand philosophical theme, and this is in the Swan's Way in the beginning, I believe, when he says that he wonders if he has some sort of brain difficulty, because he says when he tries to think of a great literary theme or a great philosophical theme, his brain just shuts down and he can't do it. So yes, I think the return to Combray, the discouragement, and then the ultimate return to the matinee. And it's no accident, of course, that it is the name Guermantes. Now it's no longer the original Duchesse, as we know, no longer the original princess. It's the Madame Verdurin now. But that no question that links back to Combray. And as you know, for certain school editions, the Combray section has been published as a separate novel. You can, all of you know this, but one of the things, I think Wallace Valley and Shelby Foote both use the word miracle to describe what Proust was able to create in this novel. And I think it's Wallace Valley who said it's like a giant tapestry, and you touch one thread and the whole thing ripples because everything is so connected.
Connected, yeah. Another thing that strikes me in this last volume is the title, Time Regained, which, in a way it clashes with the name of the book, In Search of Lost Time. So there is Time Regained and In Search of Lost Time. There are sort of a little bit of contrast. So we know that the central theme in the book is lost time. But does the title, Time Regained, suggest that time is never truly lost? That memory, when it's unlocked, like it is unlocked by the visit to Combray, just restores it? That's how he regains time.
Right, right. Well, I would say with the title, À la recherche du temps perdu, I think there's a definite emphasis on recherche, which, as you know, in French can mean both search and research. So those two elements are, it's a deep exploration of the past. And I would just come back to, I think Baudelaire's definition, I think remains compelling to me, that genius is the childhood regained à volonté. You know, it's not. Notice that he uses volonté, where Proust is going to talk la mémoire involontaire et la mémoire volontaire. And so there's this whole thing, you know, between the tremendous amount of work that Baudelaire put into what he wrote, and he died even younger than Proust, and the tremendous amount of work that Proust put into this novel. So the will and the energy put into it is extraordinary. So I would say à la recherche, you know, that's recherche is really a key word. And then I think what the experience that we all have and share, which is why we're here today, talking about this book, the energy and love that goes into a work like this is something that we immediately respond to. It grabs us, it holds us. And certainly Proust has this very tight grip on all of us, you know. And it's something, when he talks about something beneficial to others, I mean, it just keeps on giving, you know. It's what we're talking about today. And so it's always nice that we have these, that we can share what we sense and feel, and that we all have, you know, Proust is extremely rich and orchestration and variations on a theme. So it's wonderful to be able to share all of these variations with all of you.
Yeah, La Recherche, like you said, has double meaning, but so does Temps Perdu. That has a double
Exactly.
lost time or wasted time, which there's a lot of it, you know, in this book.
Right. Well, as you know, he makes the point in that's the slide we didn't read about the vocation. All the le temps perdu that he thought was wasted has now come back.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe that would be a good way to end if we want to. I'm not trying to end, but if we want to end, that quote about the vocation would be a good one to read. Let's see, that's slide number 6. We can call up Tracy's beautiful voice again.
And then a new light, less dazzling, no doubt, than the other illumination that had made me perceive that the work of art was the sole means of rediscovering lost time, shone suddenly within me. And I understood that all these materials for a work of literature were simply my past life. I understood that they had come to me in frivolous pleasures, in indolence, in tenderness, in unhappiness, and that I had stored them up without divining the purpose for which they were destined, or even their continued existence, any more than a seed does when it forms within itself a reserve of all the nutritious substances from which it will feed a plant. Like the seed, I would be able to die once the plant had developed, and I began to perceive that I had lived for the sake of the plant without knowing it, without ever realizing that my life needed to come into contact with those books that I wanted to write, and for which, when in the past I had sat down at my table to begin, I had been unable to find a subject. And thus my whole life up to the present day might and yet might not have been summed up under the title A Vocation.
Yes, I think that sums it up nicely.
He puts it to good use, right? Wasted time.
Yes, he certainly did.
Yeah. I also find it interesting that the Combray that we see at the end, I mean, the Combray we see in the first volume is beautiful. Like we are, for those of us who have visited Ilie Combray, we get disappointed because it doesn't have the same beauty that is described here in the first volume. But here in the final volume, it's not beautiful anymore. It's and it shows, because the one that he describes in the first volume is through the evocation of, it was triggered, his involuntary memory through the taste of Madeleine. So it's what his imagination, the memories that are stored in his imagination. But here is the reality of Combray as he sees it. So it's, the running theme in Proust's book, the superiority of imagination to reality.
Right, right. You remember the I don't think it's in the novel, but it's definitely in the essay that Proust wrote about Chardin and Rembrandt. But it applies. There are other passages, I can't think of them now, but I'm sure some of you can, where it's the beauty is not necessarily in the thing itself, but in the vision of the artist. And so I think we can remember that when we go to Ilie Combray. And of course, as you know, the Combray in the novel is a combination of Auteuil, where Proust actually spent a lot more time with his mother's family than he did in Ilie. So it's a combination of Auteuil, Ilie, and then of course his own imagination. Yes.
Right, right. Well, I think I don't have any more questions, and I think we are perfect as far as time goes. I think we have a few questions, maybe Renee or Melissa.
Thank you so much, Professor Carter. So I'm looking at the questions and I'm thinking, just to start off, we have a couple of questions and comments specifically to the last volume. So I thought we'd start with those so we don't run out of any time. So
Okay.
from Don Drucker says, and I quote, "The return to Combray is essentially Marcel the narrator freeing himself from the need to discover a grand philosophical theme and regain the perspective he had as a child." Picasso says basically the same thing when he says it took him 4 years to paint like Raphael, but a lifetime to paint like a child.
Okay, I think that's a very nice observation. Yes, I agree with that.
One
Yeah.
other comment on the last volume, was the final volume, this is from Jeanette, was the final volume completed / revised by Proust himself, or did his executors make significant changes?
I don't think they made significant changes in the last volume, but it was indeed edited primarily by Robert Proust, Proust's brother, with, of course, the aid of editors at Gallimard. André Breton, for a while, worked on it. I don't think it's exactly clear what his contributions were. Now, the return to Combray that in the final volumes that we discussed in the original French edition, that was part of Time Regained, and now those are the final pages of The Fugitive, Albertine Disparue. So in doing my edition, I did follow the Pléiade, the 4-volume most recent Pléiade edition, which is generally considered the definitive edition of the novel. So I don't think, yes, so it was not, Proust died, I indicate this in a note to the captive, and I don't have that in front of me, but roughly 100 or so pages into La Prisonnière, The Captive, is when Proust died. And so after that, he did not have a chance to revise the continuation of the manuscript. And that's why you have characters who've already died reappearing later in the final pages. And that's just the unfinished part of it. I don't think that has never particularly troubled me, or I don't think many other readers of Proust. You know, it's just clear that he didn't have a chance to revise that. We certainly wish, there are two wishes we can make. A, that Proust had been able to revise the complete manuscript, the complete novel, and the other is that Scott Moncrief could have lived to translate Le Temps Perdu, Le Temps Retrouvé, sorry. Yeah. I don't know if that's an answer, but that's all I've got at present on that.
Thank you. Katie is asking you or saying, thank you, Professor Carter, for your wonderful presentation and sharing your expertise. One question. The first part of the narrator's return to Combray you included towards the end of the Fugitive volume, but it was not in Scott Moncrief's translation. It was included in the beginning of Time Regained in the Andreas Mayer translations, Modern Library. Was that your decision to place that passage at the end of The Fugitive, or was that how it was structured and partitioned in the original French edition, but that passage didn't make it to Scott Moncrief's translation for some reason?
Yes, well, the Scott Moncrief translated the edition that he had, and at that time, those pages were were not there. So the play out edition, as I mentioned, the 4 volumes, I think they came out around 1987. The editors decided that those pages belonged to Albertine Disparue, or The Fugitive. And so I followed the current Pléiade edition. So that's the reason for the discrepancy there in where those pages are found. Now, obviously, that doesn't stop the flow of the narrative. Whether you put them at the end of Albertine Disparue or at the beginning of the Time Regained, you have the same sequence. So that doesn't really change anything in the way that we read the novel. In the beginning, Proust wanted to call La Prisonnière and then La Fugitive, but some other writer had come out recently with a book whose title was La Fugitive, so that's when he changed it to Albertine Disparue. Now, if you try to translate Albertine Disparue into English, you're going to run into some real challenges. So the captive and the fugitive sort of make a nice pair to put together there. You're going to say the disappearance of Albertine, that doesn't work. Are you going to say Albertine gone? That doesn't work. If you say Albertine dead, that doesn't work. So we kept the original titles of that Proust had thought of, the captive or the prisoner, or the captive and the fugitive. And throughout the novel, he makes the whole point of Albertine and others being être de fuite. The more you desire, the faster they flee and move away from you.
Thank you. We have a few more questions. Another question from Ina, who met you at the Proust Center at Jefferson Market. She is leading the K Plus Proustians reading aloud group at the Proust Center, New York, and they're reading Korean translation. Her questions are: 1, how does the musicality of Proust's French text stay alive in C.K. Scott Moncrief's English translation that you edited? 1. Number 2, how should an English reader read the novel to experience the musicality of Proust's French texts? And what are the syntactic clues we should pay attention to?
Okay, well, that's a question. I might want to have text in French and English in front of me. Just let me say that, first of all, when people ask me, what is it about Proust, or why do you love Proust so much? And I say it's the music. It's the music in the French text. It's really there. It's just like a symphony. And it's not only the music, but the themes and the variations and the way they're orchestrated and all of that. Scott Moncrief was a poet, and he understood, but he was also a practiced translator of French literature. He started out with La Chanson de Roland. You can't start out any earlier French literature than La Chanson de Roland. And then he translated Stendhal and other primary writers of the 19th century. So he had become a highly skilled translator. So he brings to that, in terms of the English language, his own skills as a poet. And then he's very keen observer and very aware of what the French call la chute des phrases, how the sentence ends. And as you know, Proust creates these spiraling sentences that may go off in several directions at once, and then bang, he brings them together at the end. They all tie up very neatly. So in la chute des phrases, how the most important word or the most important revelation comes at the very end of the translated sentence. So to me, that is one of the ways in which Scott Moncrief maintains the musicality. Now, if I think this is a fairly commonplace observation. If you only know English and you don't know French, and you're reading Proust and you only know English, then obviously you cannot compare the two. But if you are able to compare the two, then I think you see more and more that Scott Moncrief does maintain the Proustian rhythm of the sentence, and the way the sentence closes at the end on just the right note as often as he can. So again, it would take obviously I looked at all these sentences, every single one in French and every single one in translation, but you would have to, sit down and do a close comparison to see every time that works, and sometimes when syntactically or for other reasons it's not possible. Uh, as I said, just a simple phrase, those two words, Albertine disparue. I mean, how are you going to translate that? It's very difficult. So the challenges that any translator faces, but especially Scott Moncrief is the translator of Proust. And there have been others. He's not the only one, but I think certainly he's the one that most universally admired, and I think for those reasons.
I think we have time for one more question, which might be a spoiler. So I'm wondering if it's okay to read this question. I think most people. Anyway, so this question is from Robert and Sarah, and again, we will put Professor Carter's email in the chat afterwards. So there are a couple of questions still left that might take a longer period of time to answer. But this question from Robert and Sarah: thinking of the narrator's visit to Tansonville when he discovers the two ways is actually connected, do you think he is so unsettled by this realization that it triggers the dreams and the restless evening tossing and turning in his bed that open the novel? The dream takes him back to his grandparents' house in the country. Why, I must have gone to sleep after all, even though Mama never came to say good night. For I was in the country with my grandfather, who died years ago, and my body, the side on which I was lying, faithful guardians of a past that my mind would ever have forgotten.
Well, that's a very interesting question, and the fact that the two ways do connect is an important part of the circularity of the novel that I did not mention. That's a very interesting question. In the beginning, I think it's what strikes me about it. This is probably not going to be an answer to that question, but is the sort of metamorphosis that have two things: the metamorphosis that the narrator, Marcel Sombring, identifies himself with a particular book or a piece of architecture, or the rivalry between Francois I and Charles V, and so forth. And then the second thing, and this is I think maybe Proust more than any other writer, although there are hints of it in Baudelaire, I should say any other writer I'm familiar with, does stress the importance of body memory. And, that's the whole key to the Madeleine, the scent and the taste. And then, of course, when he gets out of what sets it off, as you know, in Time Regained, is rocking back and forth on the uneven paving stones. So it's his body that remembers that experience, and then it ignites in his head in an involuntary memory. So I think obviously all of these things are connected. I don't know. In addition, in Time Regained or in The Fugitive, to discovering how those paths that he thought were the two ways that were forever separated, there also is the the memory of all of the experiences that he is trying to recall that are bound up in. We're not going to have time for this. Sleep and dreams and body memory and all of those things that come together and allow him to experience, even if he can't yet translate them into a work of literature. And then, of course, when he does, after I'm sure you know this, I don't know why I'm even saying it, but after the uneven paving stones, there's the noise of the fork hitting the plate, the texture of the napkin rubbing his cheek, and so forth. So it's all of this almost overwhelming involuntary memory experience of all of the past. So I do like the way, certainly, that the opening pages and the sort of whirlpool of awakening connect with the revelations in the past, which are lucid and coherent to him, whereas they aren't in the beginning. And again, the section of the overtures, there are two episodes in the novel that we don't know exactly how they fit in to the narrative line. One is the opening, and it's called the overture, and then the other is the Madeleine experience. And we do not know. That is given to us as a separate piece, and we do not know at what point in his life the narrator had the experience of the Madeleine. We can try to figure that out for ourselves, but it's interesting to me that that is set aside. We don't know at what age he is that he had the experience of the Madeleine. Well, I'm not in any hurry, but I think our recording time may have expired. So if anyone wants to send me an email, I'll be happy to hear from you and do my best to provide an answer to whatever questions or comments you may want to send.
Thank you, Professor Carter. Fereshteh, do you have any closing remarks?
No, thank you to Fédération and Melissa and René for giving us this opportunity. Thank you, Tracy, for reading so beautifully the slides. And Professor Carter, thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and we all look forward to having you again with us very soon.
It was a pleasure for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Un grand merci.